In this lesson, we'll start designing our page in Photoshop. We'll make a grid and also take care of the page header, which contains the logo and some main headings. So let's jump to Photoshop, where I have a blank document that's 1200 by 1200. And, just like the start of every new project, it's really important that you know three things in advance. One of them is the base font size. The second is the line height, or the baseline. And the third is a default spacing that you'll put between the elements in your page. And by knowing that from the very beginning, you can make sure that your layout will be consistent. So what exactly is the baseline? Well, think of it as, well, first of all, it's a grid. It's a grid made up of horizontal lines, which are placed at every X pixels, depending on your font size. It's common practice that you use a baseline that's 1.5 times bigger than your base font size. So, considering that our page, our layout is pretty simple and we don't have a lot of text, we can use a larger font size, 16 pixels for example. And that means the baseline will be 24 pixels. So let's go ahead and create a new group. When creating the grid, make sure you place it at the very top of your page. And inside that, create a new layer, which will be called baseline. All right, fill this with white. And now let's go ahead and create our pattern. So go to File, New, make a new document, 1 by 24. Zoom in. Create a new layer, and you need to color the very last pixel. Just make it any color you want. Then hide the background and go to Edit, Define Pattern. And here you can just give it any name you want. For example, baseline 24 pixels, so you know what it's all about. I've already made this, so I'm gonna skip this step. And I'm gonna go back here, apply pattern overlay, and I'm gonna select the baseline 24 pixels. Mine is blue, and that's how I wanted it. Okay, I'm gonna reduce the fill of this layer because I don't want any of that white showing up, and also reduce the opacity of the lines to about 30%. Okay, so now we have a grid. Okay, well, that's about it for the grid. You might ask yourselves, well, don't we use like a normal grid with columns and stuff? Well, normally, yes, we would use a grid, but since all of the elements in our page are aligned on the center of the page, it doesn't really make sense. Plus, our page will be fluid, so it will change its width according to the viewport. So no extra grid for us in this case. All right, let's begin with the header. Create a new group. And let's create yet another group inside that called logo. Now, in a real life situation, you would use the company logo. But for now, since this is just a tutorial, I'm going to use a placeholder logo. I'm going to make it 72 by 72. Okay. My foreground color is set to F9 3F1C, which is the color we're going to use throughout the layout for links and such. So I'm going to color the base of my logo with that particular color. Next, I'm going to add a custom shape. It's just a simple quill icon. Align it. Quill icon. Okay, so that's our logo. Align it on the center of the page. If you're wondering how to do that, well, you just press Command or Control A to select everything, and then just using the alignment controls, align horizontal centers. All right, now I was talking about a default spacing. Well, in my case, I'm going to use 48 pixels as a default spacing because it is a multiple of my baseline. And you have to remember this. When working with a baseline grid, it's really important to set margins, paddings, and heights of various elements as multiples of your baseline. That way you make sure that the vertical rhythm of your page is kept. Okay, so I'm gonna align it at the top, 2 rows from my grid as a top padding, and also I'm gonna leave 2 rows below it. All right, next up will be the headings. So for the heading 1, which is the main title of the page, I'm gonna say, let's create a text area actually, and I'm gonna say Quill is an incredible product. Okay, so just placeholder text really. Okay, font size will be, font family will be Gentium Basic, 36 pixels, so rather big, center aligned, and also the color should be something like 2F, 2F, 2F. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger, something like that. And we're gonna align it so that we have 2 rows from my grid as distance. Now notice the text doesn't really fit within the grid, and that's one of the problems you have with baseline grids. Sometimes text is rendered in such a way that it won't really fall on those grid lines. You know, this is like the ideal case, yeah, where the base of your text rests on the grid line, but in the real world that's not always possible. So we'll do our best to accommodate for the grid, and we won't worry about the line height too much right now. It's currently set to auto, but we'll set proper line heights within the CSS. Okay, so below this we'll have like a small separator, which we can do using the line tool. Something like this, around 400 pixels in width. Okay, align it on the center. Let's call it separator, and the border color, or the actual color, should be D1, D6, D4. Okay. Again, 2 rows of spacing. All right, and now it's time for the final piece of text. So just bear with me here. All right, so let's make this a bit smaller. It should be about 24 pixels. I made a little mistake here. Okay. The color should be a bit lighter than the H1 we used. So I'm going to use 62, 62, 62. Okay, and we're going to position this as well, something like this. All right, this one we can make a bit bigger. Something like that. Okay, now the idea here is really simple. We have a description for the product, an additional description, which also contains some links. So for example, this will be a link pointing to the progress bar we're going to build later on. And also the freebie will be a link pointing to the freebie section. All right. And that's about it for the header. In the next lesson, we'll move on to the sign up area. We'll have a nice dark area here on the bottom, which will contain a sign up form. So thank you for watching. I'll see you then.